Welcome to worship this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. Cedar Lane is a liberal religious community where we gather to explore the eternal, nurture community, and build a more just world. We are a community where love works. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, and whatever your life circumstance, you are welcome here. I especially welcome those who are joining our service virtually, whether you're streaming live right now or catching up with the service later. We're so glad you could join us. If you are new to Cedar Lane, we have a small gift for you. So if you're new, would you raise your hand so that we can get that gift to you? Thank you for choosing to worship with us this morning. And all are invited to linger after the service to enjoy coffee and conversation. If you choose to use a yellow mug, our members and friends will be sure to greet you. Before we move into our worship time this morning, I'd like to call your attention to your news insert in your order of celebration for more about what's going on at the church right now and in the upcoming weeks. I'd like to call your attention to one thing, and then Hillary and Reverend Abi have a couple of things to share as well. With the upcoming election and a lot of the emotions and feelings and worries and anxiety about it, Cedar Lane is getting involved with some voting registration work in the area. If you're curious to learn more, stop by the social justice table in the lounge after the service. And Hillary?
Good morning. My name is Hillary Collins Gilpatrick. I'm the Director of Religious Education here at Cedar Lane, and I stand before you to make a plea. During this hour, during this service, we offer childcare downstairs from 11 to about 12:15, and we have currently a dearth of volunteers. We definitely really need people to sign up to volunteer, to offer maybe 1 or 2 Sundays over the next couple months, just an hour of your time to hang out with children, well, small children, babies and toddlers downstairs at 11 o'clock. We'd love your help.
This is a great way if you are looking for a baby fix. If you have aged out from that phase in your life and you really need that, this is a wonderful way.
It is.
It is. And as I was sharing with the congregation at the 9 a.m. service, if I wasn't doing this, I would be there.
And so, Abby, I would like to invite you, because Joan Riggs, our coordinator of childcare, and I will be at coffee hour signing people up, so come on by.
Well, if they don't sign up, let me know.
Okay.
I'm sure between Michelle and our wonderful worship associates and Norman, they can manage next week's service at 11.
Or we could bring all the babies up here.
That's even a better idea. Thank you, Hillary. I'd like to highlight another workshop that's coming up next Saturday at 8:30, and it will begin with breakfast. I want to emphasize that. Begins with breakfast, given we are a food-based religion. We always begin with food. And it's an opportunity for us to really go deeper into one of the key strategic directions that the congregation approved at the annual meeting in May 2016, which is to really clarify and focus our social justice efforts. So this gives us an opportunity not only to gain a better understanding of our many social justice programs that we do at Cedar Lane, but also to go a little deeper about why we do what we do and how might we better coordinate them. Excuse me. Didn't mean to get emotional about it, but here I am. But to really build a stronger and more vital social justice ministry at Cedar Lane, we really need you there because this is a congregational conversation that we're trying to organize. I will be facilitating the conversation. Right now, we only have about 16 or 20 people who have signed up, and we need at least 50 to make this work. So I'm looking to you to sign up. You can do that at the social justice table or send an email. Either way, I look forward to seeing many of you there next Saturday at 8:30. And now, I invite you to take a moment to greet your neighbor with a handshake, hug, fist bump, high five. Let us center ourselves. Let us center ourselves. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu. Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Let us seek the quiet and the calm. Let us lay aside our loud calling. Let us lay aside our struggle. Let us listen to the melodies that recall other proportions. Let us seek the dimension that endures beyond all nowness and here-ness. Let us speak softly that we may hear. Let us enter into the holy quiet of this hour. Let me invite Mala Wedberg to come forward and join us for the chalice lighting. And let me ask you to please rise in body or in spirit to share in unison the words printed in your order of celebration. To face the world's shadows, a chalice of light. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's terrors, a chalice of courage. To face the world's turmoil, a chalice of peace. May its glow fill our spirits, our hearts, and our lives.
Vatapi Ganapatim Bhaje, 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 Varana Shauvara Pradam Shivarana Shauvara Pradam Shivarana Shauvara Pradam Shivatapi Ganapatim Bhaje. Bhutadi Samsevita Charano Bhutadi भूतादिसंसेवितचरणौ भूतादिसंसेवितचरणौ भूतबौद्धिकप्रपञ्चभरणौ भूतादिसंसेवितचरणौ भूतबौद्धिकप्रपञ्चभरणौ वितराहिणौ विनितयोहिनौ वितराहिणौ विनितयोहिनौ विश्वकारणौ विघ्नवारणौ वितराहिणौ विनितयोहिनौ विश्वकारणौ विघ्नवारणौ वातापि गणपतिं भजे वारणा शंवरप्रदौ शिवातापि गणपतिं भजे पुराकुम्भसम्भवमुनिवर प्रपूजितं त्रिगुणमध्यगतं मुरारी प्रमुखाद्युपासितं मुरारी प्रमुखाद्युपासितं मूलाधारक्षेत्रास्थितं परादिचत्वारिवातात्मजौ प्रणवस्वरूप वक्रदुष्टौ निरन्तरौ निडलचन्द्रघटौ निजवा मकरविद्रुतेषु दण्डं प्रणवस्वरूप वक्रदुष्टौ निरन्तरौ निडलचन्द्रघटौ निजवा मकरविद्रुतेषु दण्डौ कराम्बुजपसबीजापुरम् कराम्बुजपसबीजापुरं कलुषविदूरं भूताहारम् अनादिगुरुगुहतोषितबिम्बं हंसध्वनिभूषितहेरम्बं कराम्बुजपसबीजापुरं कलुषविदूरं भूताहारम् अनादिगुरुगुहतोषितबिम्बं हंसध्वनिभूषितहेरम्बं वादापि गणपतिं भजे वारणा शंवरप्रदौ शिवातापि गणपतिं भजे
We share this reading now from the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore. The ocean of peace lies ahead of me. Sail the boat, O pilot. You are my constant companion now. Take me into your lap. Along our journey to the infinite, the pole star alone will shine. O giver of freedom, set me free. May your forgiveness and compassion be my eternal resources for the journey. May the mortal ties fall away. May the vast embrace hold me in your embrace. And with an undaunted heart, may I come to know the great unknown. With an undaunted heart, may I come to know the great unknown.
We gather, as we always gather, in sacred space, a place set aside as a sanctuary amid the many challenges of life, a center from which we may gather strength to face these challenges with courage, with grace, and with the spirit of justice. In this time of reflection and remembrance, we lift up those in our community who are living through significant passages, the small and extraordinary milestones of life. We are sorry to share the news of the death of Cedar Lane member Sam Freiberg. Sam died on Wednesday at Suburban Hospital after a brief illness. His family appreciates cards and well wishes right now. A celebration of Sam's life will be held on Sunday, October 16th at 2:30 here at Cedar Lane. Cedar Lane members Glennis Bollay, Marion Torsia, and Marisol Scott all continue to recover and appreciate the care and well wishes they've received from their Cedar Lane friends. We mourn the passing of the Reverend Dr. Spencer Levan, former dean of Meadville Lombard Theological School, interfaith leader, renowned scholar, and beloved mentor to Reverend Abi. We continue to hold in our hearts all those whose lives are lost and whose loved ones are lost to violence in our world. In particular, we hold in the light those killed in Aleppo, Syria, this past week. May these friends of ours and these companions in the world and all that lives unspoken in our hearts be held in the embrace of prayer, in the peace of shared silence, and then in song.
Would you join me now in the spirit of prayer? O nameless one of many names, Spirit of our hearts and minds, we have gathered again out of our separateness to know that we are not alone. In our fears, we're not alone. In our grasping for peace, finding it in fleeting moments, and losing it again to some turmoil of the mind and heart, we are not alone. In our cynical moments, our wanderings, we are not alone. In our pain, we're not alone. In our sorrow, we are not alone. And so we dwell in you, O Spirit of healing and wholeness, for this brief time, willing to be held here in a deep and abiding love, whose origins we do not know, whose reality is irresistible, a love that holds us, that never lets us go, nor lets us down, a love which calls us on, reaches between us to fill spaces, consoles the grieving, and calms the anxious. A love which gives new vision to eyes dimmed by tears and exhaustion, that opens the ear to deeper truth and makes a place in the heart as hope. For a while may we rest in this peace and be held by this peace. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. As we continue to rest in peace, those who remember a loved one or they commemorate the anniversary of the loss of a loved one are invited to rise in body and or in spirit and to remain as you are until the hymn. Let us be in silence together.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Ahimsa is a comprehensive principle. We are helpless mortals caught in the conflagration of violence. The saying that life lives on life has deep meaning in it. Humans cannot for a moment live without consciously or unconsciously committing outward violence. The very fact of our living, our eating, our drinking, our moving about, necessarily involves some destruction of life, be it ever so minute. A votary of ahimsa therefore remains true to their faith if the spring of all their actions is compassion, if they shun, to the best of their ability, the destruction of the tiniest creature, try to save it, and thus incessantly strive to be free from the deadly coil of violence. Such an individual will then constantly grow in self-restraint and in love for others.
Nonviolence is the greatest force at the disposal of humankind. It is mightier than the mightiest weapon of destruction devised by the ingenuity of humans. Destruction is not the law of humans. Every murder or other injury, no matter for what cause, committed or inflicted on another, is a crime against humanity.
Nonviolence is a universal principle, and its operation is not limited by a hostile environment. Indeed, its efficacy can be tested only when it acts in the midst of and in spite of opposition. Our nonviolence would be a hollow thing and worth nothing if it depended for its success on the goodwill of authorities.
Some friends have told me that truth and nonviolence have no place in politics and worldly affairs. I do not agree. I have no use for them as a means of individual salvation. Their introduction and application in everyday life has been my experiment all along.
No person could be actively nonviolent and not rise against social injustice no matter where it occurred.
Nonviolence is a power which can be wielded equally by all, children, young men and women, or grown-up people, provided they have a living faith in the God of love and have therefore equal love for all. When nonviolence is accepted as the law of life, it must pervade the whole being and not be applied to isolated acts.
Grateful to our music ministry team for providing that beautiful anthem. Thank you. And to Arvind and Priya for joining us in worship this morning and for sharing the richness of the Indian music tradition. Thank you. Thank you. It's not often that we begin a service with Vatapi Ganapatim, which is a traditional piece that is sung at many an Indian concert as an invocation to Lord Ganesha, the God of new beginnings. So as a young man, my grandfather met Mahatma Gandhi. He and some of his friends were invited to visit with Gandhiji when he was visiting our native town, Rajahmundry, in southern India. This was around 1930 or 1931. My grandfather was 19 or 20 then. And so he and his friends, of course, were excited, and they went to meet the Mahatma, the great soul. And when they got to the house where he was staying, they found that there was a very large crowd outside chanting slogans and singing bhajans, including Raghupati, that we will be singing later in the service. And it was pretty loud and raucous. And they were also shouting slogans like Bharat Mata Ki Jai, long live Mother India. And they proceeded to go inside the house, and they were ushered into this very large room where there again was a huge crowd that was all seated quietly. And there was Mahatma Gandhi, clad in his khadi or homespun cotton clothes and spinning away on the charkha wheel. And the whole room was quiet except for the rhythmic clickety-clack of the charkha. And Gandhiji lifted his head, saw these young men at the back of the room, and he quietly beckoned them, smiling his famous toothless smile. And when they got closer, he invited them to sit right next to him. And then he went back to his business. And the room was very still. And as my grandfather settled down and really started to absorb the surroundings, he felt something deep inside. He felt a deep inner peace that started to emanate from within and radiate through his whole being. And he felt both at peace and transported by the experience of being with this great soul. Now, my grandfather loved to tell this story more times than I really wanted to hear it. And he would keep going back to the same point every time. And this happened especially when he found me in a certain way of being. Either if I had gotten into an argument with my mother, which happened quite frequently, or if I got into a fight at school, or I was pretty agitated about something, he would tell me this story and say to me that he was impressed, deeply impacted by Mahatma Gandhi that day, that not only motivated him to get involved in India's struggle for independence, but also to mold his life based on Gandhiji's ideals of simplicity, sacrifice, generosity, and a commitment to peace. Because he was deeply impacted, not by Gandhiji's eloquence and charisma. In fact, that day Gandhiji was on his vow of silence, which he kept once a week, but by that sense of peace that he felt around this man, that in turn impacted him so deeply. And that made a mark on me. And he would always say that impacted him so deeply that he lived his life according to what he felt was important. Now, it is true that Mahatma Gandhi had that impact on many people, not just in India, but all around the world. To this day, he endures in our memories, in the best part of our minds and our hearts, as an embodiment of peace and nonviolence. His ideas and methods of civil disobedience, or satyagraha as he preferred to call them, have been studied and emulated by many, including Bayard Rustin and the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. here in the United States, Madiba, Nelson Mandela in South Africa, and Aung San Suu Kyi in Myanmar. Now, American activists struggling today for racial justice or immigration reform or climate justice also invoke his name, much as it was brought into play during South Africa's fight against apartheid. It may be that this most Indian and very Hindu of leaders, revered as Bapuji or father of modern India, means more now to the world at large than to his own country people who seem to have lost their way in keeping faith with his vision and instead have put him on a pedestal so they don't have to deal with the challenges that he posed in living lives of integrity and service. But his message of ahimsa and satyagraha continues to resonate to this day. Now, some of the most important reasons for the relevance of his message are that we see all around us the need for nonviolence in the midst of wanton violence, restraint in the midst of rampant materialism, equality in the midst of rising inequality, voluntary service in the midst of banal self-absorption, and conservation in the midst of mindless consumption. But for me, as it did for my grandfather, his message of ahimsa is of utmost importance. It is both a spiritual discipline that I seek to follow and a spiritual struggle that I continue to fail in. Now, Gandhiji did not view ahimsa as a strategy of convenience. It was not a coat that you wear today and take off tomorrow, he said. He firmly believed in ahimsa being a way of life. Although he emphasized the need for spirituality in the practice of ahimsa, he also saw it as a practical necessity. Unless one lived it, one cannot practice ahimsa. But first, a clarification of terms. Now, the word ahimsa does not contain a negative or passive connotation, as does the English translation, non-violence. It is derived from the Sanskrit verb root han, which means to harm or to kill. And the form himsa means desirous to do harm or to kill someone. And the prefix a is a negation. So ahimsa literally means lacking any desire to do harm or to kill, which is perhaps the central theme upon which Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain morality is built. Whereas the word nonviolence connotes a negative, almost passive condition, ahimsa suggests a very dynamic way of being in which power is released. So the implication of ahimsa is that when the human heart is free of all violence, the state which remains is love. So when you chip away at all that clogs our spiritual arteries, all that remains is love. And it is not something that we have to acquire, because it is ever present. It's already present deeply within and needs only to be released. To be love itself is our true nature. And love is God. Not God is love. We all get that. Love is God. And when we practice love, we embody the divine, the Atman, the divine spark that is within all of us. Now, we will not always get along, but we do not have to go to war based on small disagreements or even gestures. We will not always feel loving or joyous, but we do not need to take out our unhappiness on others. Now, we will not always be able to live without fear, but we do not need to let desperation for control determine our actions. This is the essence of ahimsa in action. It is a heartfelt commitment to refrain from harming others in thought, word, or deed, and to be a force for healing in the world. And Gandhiji says if we were to practice this, we would know not to think ill of others, not to use words that are hurtful or aggressive, or commit actions that can be destructive and cause pain. Simple. Right? It is. Try it. While it sounds simple, ahimsa requires a complete shift of attitude, a paradigm shift, a change of heart, or as the Reverend William Barber would say, a new heart. Few of us, you see, get through life without causing harm, whether by ignoring someone's feelings, or using more of the earth's resources than we really need, or buying products made by underaged and underpaid workers. And how often do we say and do things that are hurtful or harmful to others and ourselves? How many times a day, consciously or otherwise, do we criticize ourselves, berate ourselves, reaffirm our own sense of hopelessness, or see ourselves as being unworthy? How much guilt, resentment, or shame do we cling to, thus perpetuating negativity? Now, while I pray and meditate every day and try to live a spiritual life to the best of my ability, I'm not always a peaceful person, the evidence notwithstanding. So please don't be fooled by what I bring to you. Just ask my family. Sometimes my ways of waging my own private life of war forms a sticky knot of anger, anxiety, and resentment inside me, and it builds. And at times I am very easily seduced by the agenda of fear that the world likes to deposit at my doorstep. And when I find myself in those situations, in that uncomfortable space, I often feel stuck with no way out. And in moments when my anger is too large, my practiced and habitual commitment to ahimsa feels like a huge burden to bear instead of the release that it actually is. And I find myself shifting away completely from that commitment. So in a world where greed and selfishness and violence seem to be the norm, it calls for great courage to not react with anger, which can so easily lead to more violence. But as Gandhiji reminds us, ahimsa stems from a basic recognition that we have a choice in how we choose to live our lives. So how do we choose to practice ahimsa? We must begin within. He says we must learn to unflinchingly face our fears and try to befriend them. Because when we confront our fears, we gain some power over them. We realize that some of our fears are more imaginary than real, that it actually may be a piece of rope than a snake. Second, he says, fear is mastered only through love. As the Christian scriptures say, there is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. The love of self, the love of others, the love of the world, despite its terrible brokenness. And forgiveness is an essential component of love. In his autobiography, Gandhiji writes about a simple act of sublime forgiveness that he received from his father when, as a 15-year-old, he stole some money from his ailing father and wrote a letter to him because he could not live with what he did, begging his forgiveness, which brought tears to his father's eyes. Gandhiji writes, "A clean confession combined with a promise never to commit the sin again when offered before one who has the right to receive it is the purest type of repentance. When such ahimsa becomes self-embracing, it transforms everything it touches. There is no limit to its power." This parent-child episode to him was more than just an expression of his father's love. For him, it was pure ahimsa in action. But Gandhiji also maintained that seeking and finding that inner peace was not enough. That was only the first step. That living a life of ahimsa is not complete unless it is practiced in the company of one another in order to create a true and lasting peace in the world. He pointed out that you cannot be peaceful inside all by yourself, just going off to a corner and then chanting Om. May feel peaceful, but then you're back. The only way we can do it is to do it together in places like these, where we try to practice, however imperfectly, the art of being at peace inside and with one another, and take that peace out into the world. So this is a way of being, the way to live in the midst of things. And if love is the basis of ahimsa, satyagraha is love in action. Satyagraha, or truth force, was molded by Gandhiji in South Africa in 1908, and he perfected it into a powerful force in India in the 1930s. Now, he did not like the term passive resistance, which seemed to him a rather cowardly refusal to oppose injustice. He saw satyagraha as a lifelong process, a way to engage with conflict and resolve it peacefully on many levels of human interaction. As Joan Bondurant explains, in Gandhiji's satyagraha, dogma was exchanged for an open exploration of context. Nonviolent action was taken not to assert propositions, but to create possibilities. The method was designed to open new options and demand the opponent to make a choice. And this was done with participants continually examining their own motives. And the whole process was pervaded by a spirit of giving the opponent the courage to change and releasing the hidden potential of mutual goodwill. So what can we do, friends, on Gandhi's birthday to achieve peace? How can we build a society where peace will be the central concern of all its people? I think Gandhiji would consider the following as essential conditions for peace. That people in power, whether political, economic, religious, civic, or administrative, need to develop a more holistic view of peace. And if we want a better country for our children and our children's children, then we need to act and ensure that such a holistic view is adopted and that a comprehensive approach is used in addressing the issue of peace. We cannot just expect a new government to change things on its own. We have to take the responsibility for bringing about changes, and in this we need to build broad coalitions to do this work together. And we need to support our children and youth to build a culture of nonviolence and promote a culture of peaceful resistance to injustice. So these are some of the goals that Gandhiji set for development work in India, and I guess they still apply to us today. Perhaps only when these goals have been achieved will we be able to say to ourselves that we have achieved peace in ourselves, in our country, in the world, a peace for which Gandhiji lived, worked, and died. So may it be.
receive this morning's offering, may each of us look into not just our wallets or our checkbooks to see how much we have with us. Let us look into our hearts as well and see what is available there, how much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope. And let us take our offering from that account. The offering to sustain the work and ministry of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church will now be given and gratefully received. Thank you for your generosity.
Don't ask me to be like her, to hide myself instead. Let me cry, let me scream, let me fall, let me fall apart. Let me be
മനതിലുരുതി വേണ്ടും വാക്കിനിലേ ഇനിമൈ വേണ്ടും മനതിലുരുതി വേണ്ടും വാക്കിനിലേ ഇനിമൈ വേണ്ടും நினைவு நல்லது வேண்டும் நினைவு நல்லது வேண்டும் நெருங்கின பொருள் கைப்பட வேண்டும் மனதில் உறுதி வேண்டும்.
I won't be held hostage by your fear. Walking through this world alone. I wanna love, I wanna feel, I wanna be human, human.
Sari gari sari gari sari sada sari ga pa gari sari ga pa ga gari sari gari sada sari gari ga pa da pa da sa da pa ga da pa gari ga gari sa sari ri ga gari ri sari gari sari sada sari ga pa gari sari ga pa ga gari sari gari ri sari gari ga pa da sa da pa ga da pa gari ga pa da pa da sa da pa ga da pa gari sari ga pa da pa da sa da pa ga da pa gari sari ga da sa da sari sa gari sa da sari sa da pa da sa da pa gari sari manadil urudi வேண்டும்.
I'm tired of all your secrets. I refuse to pretend. I wanna tell, I wanna share, I wanna be human, human.
Arvind and Priya, thank you for sharing that beautiful poem by the Tamil poet Subramanya Bharati, which pretty much encapsulates what Mahatma Gandhi strove in his life, living a life of simplicity, integrity, and service. Thank you. Please rise in body and or in spirit to sing Raghupati Raghava Rajaram. The words are on screen and also number 178 in the gray hymnal.
Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram Sita Ram Jai Sita Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram Sita Ram Jai Sita Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीता राम सीता राम जय सीता राम पतित पावन सीता राम सीता राम जय सीता राम पतित पावन सीता राम रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीता राम
Please remain as you are and hold hands or hold elbows. For this familiar prayer that I have shared many a time, a prayer that calls for all to be happy, all to be healthy, for all to experience what is good, and for no one to suffer. Om Sarve Santu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Om Shanti 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 Om Shanti 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 Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Please be seated for the postlude.